Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Spoiler Force Podcast, courtesy of Poplug Podcast. You can find more episodes of Spoiler Force Podcast at facebook.com/poplugpodcast or on YouTube and SoundCloud under Spoiler Force Podcast. Alright, so this has been quite the week actually. New movie trailers, a new video game trailer, new comic book and manga issues being released, and also new anime episodes being released this week as well. So I will be discussing about what I've been reading and watching, and um, talking about things that I've been looking at over this week as well. So first off, I just wanted to talk about the Final Fantasy VII remake. Looks like the game here isn't going to be a full game. It's going to be something that's episodic, like The Walking Dead. This was confirmed by IGN.com, showing that Square Enix is going to release this game as an episodic game, releasing each chapter by episodes, and they didn't really confirm to see if it was going to be payable, but most likely it is. You might have to pay for each episode that they release. Usually, the games like this, the first episode is always free, and then the rest of the episodes you have to pay a like $2.99 or $3.99 fee, depending on how much the game actually is. I know that for sure in June they're releasing more footage of the game. As of now, they just released the battle system of the game, showing the gameplay and just showing the overall characters, how they look now in the game versus how they did back then. I know that this game was something they're waiting for a very long time, like Kingdom Hearts 3. I know I was one of those fans that was waiting for this remake of Final Fantasy 7, but in the end I gave up because it just took too damn long and I just didn't want to play it anymore by this time. I am looking forward to seeing how they're going to remake this game. Hopefully in June they show more of the storyline versus just the gameplay itself. I was glad to see characters like Cloud, Barrett, Aerith, and even Sephiroth at the end of the trailer. So it brings back a lot of memories of playing this PS1 version of Final Fantasy VII, and hopefully this remake holds up to the wait, because we wait over 10 years for this game and it's still not done. I feel like it's not really worth the wait anymore. They have to make this extremely, extremely well, and throw us off with something new as well. Probably make more of the side story playable, so we might get to play it like as Zack, even though there was a Crisis Core game, but maybe play as other characters in the game instead of just being Cloud the whole time, and maybe they add in more of the story from the other games as well into this remake, and that way we can just play the game overall and experience the entire world of Final Fantasy VII. That's just something I wanted to touch up on of the Final Fantasy VII remake game trailer. Again, I think it looks very good. I'm just not gonna be able to play it because I'm just choosing not to play this game because the wait was just too long, and I just don't play games as much anymore. Another thing I wanted to talk about was some comic books that I've been reading. I've been reading some of the comic books that I have in my room that I haven't touched up at all, such as the Superman Shazam First Thunder series. It's a 4-issue miniseries. I'm just going to recap the story here. It's just showing Superman and Shazam working together before the time of Wonder Woman, Flash, and Green Lantern. So essentially, they're just saying in this story, Shazam is a hero before the other heroes arrive, and it's just like the beginning of the Age of Heroes. And then they pretty much work together, fight off some magical antagonists. The main antagonist was Dr. Savannah and Lex Luthor. As you read along in the story, you find out that they know the truth of who Billy Batson is, and so during a crossfire, one of Billy Batson's friends gets killed, and then he feels the guilt and shame, and then because of that, he reveals who he is to Superman, saying that I don't think I'm ready to be a hero because of what just happened, and so when Superman finds out who he is, he confronts the wizard Shazam and tells him, like, he's just a kid. Why are you putting this on him? Why are you giving him this kind of power when it should be an adult? And then the wizard Shazam says, well, Billy Batson was fated to have these powers, and maybe you should guide him. So at the end of this series, Superman reveals who he is to Billy Batson, and at the end, the last panel says the last panel is showing him saying that I'm Clark Kent. It's a great read, honestly. I felt like this could have been if this was a story of continuity, it would have been a really good read. But this was made back in 2005, 2006. It's only 4 issues. There was no second volume, which I was bummed. I really wish there was a second volume, because imagine seeing a story where Shazam learned everything from these heroes. Imagine him learning something from Batman and learning how to be a Robin as a kid, and then when he needed to, he can just use the powers of Shazam and still fight like Superman. I thought that would be something great to read. This story, I heard about it on Comic Historian's podcast. Comic Historian is a great summarizer of comic books and manga, so definitely check him out on YouTube and listen to his podcast as well. He's very detailed with his stories here, so if you want to learn about comic book characters or story arcs and within like a 10-minute time frame, definitely watch his videos. He's not boring on YouTube, and he's very creative. I like his content, so definitely check him out. And again, thanks to him, I was able to learn about this story, because if I hadn't listened to his podcast, I would have never known that there was a story of Superman and Shazam. And if you're interested in this story, it's called Superman Shazam, First Thunder. The writer's name is Judd Winnick, and the art is done by Joshua Middleton. And I bought the story by single issue, so I paid around $20 on eBay. But you can find the trade paperback or the hardcover as well, and read it from there. Or you can read it online if you have any comic book websites as well. Or you can just buy it digitally. But for me personally, I like to have an actual comic in my hands. It just makes it feel more authentic. Another series I've been reading that came out this past Wednesday is Batman and the Outsiders. It's the first issue of this series. It takes place after one of the chapters in Detective Comics where Batman and Black Lightning teamed up together. And now in Batman and the Outsiders, Batman has Jefferson, or Black Lightning, take the lead of this new team, which consists of himself, Black Lightning, Katana, Orphan, or Cassandra Cain. That's her name, and then Duke, or the Signal, who is one of the new Batman characters and one of the new students of Batman. He's not really a Robin, because in the Batman and the Signal series, he's actually a hero that fights in the daytime versus at nighttime, like the Robins or like Batman. And he's actually a metahuman, so he can see light energy as well. I didn't read what happened in Detective Comics. I know that they teamed up. I remember the cover perfectly because it was Black Lightning on the cover. But in this series, it picks up right off from there. And apparently in this new series here, Batman has Black Lightning take charge of this new team so they can learn how to work together. And apparently they're trying to save this metahuman girl named Sophia that is being tracked. Not too much detail has been revealed in this first chapter. They just show you who they are and what they're doing and who Sophia is. Essentially, she survived the car crash and walked away from it with no scratches. Then at the last panel, she's confronted by a character named Caliber, and who's trying to assist her. But then this character Caliber, it looked like a ripoff of Cable from the X-Men, so it kind of like threw me off a little bit, and I almost lost interest in this book, but I'll give it another shot. The next issue comes out next month. Hopefully it picks up from there. Another series that I was reading this week, it's not so much a comic book, but it's more of a manga art form, but it has comic book characters. The title is called Batman and the Justice League. Now with this story here, it's written by Shiori Teshirogi, I think that's her last name. She's the creator and illustrator for Saint Seiya: The Last Canvas, which is a spin-off story of the anime series called Saint Seiya. If you don't know what Saint Seiya is, it's a old anime series with pretty boy protagonist in armor. It's kind of like started off that trend back in the late 80s, early 90s, such as like Ronin Warriors and stuff like that. So the way how this manga is drawn, they're very pretty boy looking. So you see like Batman and Superman and Aquaman, they don't look as tough as they usually do. But then the artwork is done very well. The story itself is very interesting. It's about a boy named Rui who comes from a line of of Japanese descent, like an ancient line of Japanese descent. They haven't gone too detailed into it yet, but they will. They will touch upon it on the next volume. Now, and what's happened so far is that his parents were in an accident in Gotham in a lab explosion, and they were funding this energy experiment. So when he gets to Gotham, he runs into Batman, who then they run into the Joker and Lex Luthor and try to find out what's going on and why they are all in Gotham. And it turns out that this energy that they've been working on takes place all around Gotham. The villains and heroes are fighting for this energy here, and then with the second volume, they start off with Batman and Ocean Master fighting because Ocean Master breaks out of his prison and goes to Gotham and tries to find this energy for himself with the help of the Joker and Lex Luthor. Then Aquaman comes in. You know, Aquaman and Ocean Master had their feud. It's the same. It's the same sibling rivalry, misunderstanding. And I like that in this story as well. It takes place after Batman lost Jason Todd. So Batman has a lot of trust issues, and he doesn't want to work with the League at all because he doesn't want to see anyone die. And so when Aquaman comes in to help, he kind of like hesitates at first. He realizes that he needs their help because it turns out that there's more than just it's more than something Batman can handle when it comes to the villains, and because it's involving energy, he needs help from characters like Wonder Woman, Superman, and Aquaman. And so Batman and the League are fighting the Joker and this other enemy that's trying to take control of the energy in Gotham and Ocean Master as well. And so they end off with them confronting them as a team. And so it turns out that there's more to the story than just the energy because the main character's mother is pretty much like overwhelmed by this energy and it changes her appearance. So that's going to be a big twist because Batman tells the main character that you're going to have to get involved with this too. And so I'm looking forward to the next volume, which is in October. So hopefully they pick up more on this story as well. And hopefully they show the Flash, Green Lantern, and also other characters. I kind of saw a premise of the third volume. So hopefully it is true that they do show the Reverse Flash as well. And Sinestro helping the Injustice League, fighting the Justice League. And that'd be a good way to see them fight each other in this manga art story. And yeah, I'm really excited for the next volume. I finished the second volume within a night, and I couldn't stop reading it. So I'm really looking forward to this next volume in October. To continue on with other stories that I've been reading as well, there's a Spider-Man miniseries, which is 6 issues. It's called Spider-Man Life Story, taking place in different times of the past, such as like the 60s and 70s and whatnot, and it's just showing how Spider-Man would have been in those time settings. I'm not going to break down too much of this story because there's not really much that's going on besides the fact that it's just another typical Spider-Man story with Gwen Stacy, MJ, the Green Goblin, like that. What's interesting though was seeing that Spider-Man was waiting to see if he was going to get drafted for the Vietnam War, and he never did, but Flash Thompson did. And then the way how they wrote it off is that Flash Thompson died in the Vietnam War, and that he runs into Captain America as well, who was at first assisting America in the Vietnam War, and it turns out he switched sides. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That was an interesting take of the story here. So definitely check that out at your comic book store as well. Again, this is called Spider-Man Life Story, and there's like the dates on there, like it'll say like 60s or 70s along with the issue number. Now, speaking of Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer just released as well. For those of you who didn't know, which I didn't know either, Spider-Man or Tom Holland and Zendaya are actually confirmed to be dating based off of Elle.com. On Elle.com, it looks like the confirmation was from Tom Holland's mutual friend, and they must have confirmed it on Instagram. So it looks like they are dating in real life, and if they are, hopefully if they are dating in real life, hopefully it portrays more in their movie characters, because I like to see that when it comes to these actual actors who are dating each other, like how Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone were dating, and how their affections towards each other played off in their Spider-Man movie together. So hopefully with Zendaya and Tom Holland, it does the same thing as well. I'm not too big of a Zendaya fan. I didn't really like her at first being casted in the first Spider-Man movie and having the MCU confirm that she was MJ, even though she's not named Mary Jane in the story. I'm kind of old school on this. I really wish they had found a proper Mary Jane instead of naming her Mary Jane. And if they were going to use her as a character in this story, I felt like they should have just have her be a new character that was introduced versus being the character that's overriding Mary Jane. But then it is what it is. I hopefully they do a better job at showing their relationship in this movie. And I'm really looking forward to Spider-Man Far From Home because it's not only the last MCU movie of 2019. They've also mentioned a multiverse, which is confirmed by Nick Fury, who confirms that the snap from Endgame caused a effect on the time-space continuum. So it looks like Jake Gyllenhaal's character Mysterio is a hero from another Earth. Because of that, he's come to our Earth to help Tom Holland out as well. But then in the comic books, if you don't know, Mysterio was a magician, so hopefully they use that aspect of him as well, because we all know Mysterio is a villain in this movie, and he's a part of the Sinister Six. It's pretty predictable to see that the monsters that they're fighting, it's something that's made by Mysterio, and he mentions in the trailer as well that people have to be sacrificed as well. So hopefully that's a part of the confrontation he has with Peter Parker. Because Jake Gyllenhaal's a good actor, I know that he's going to pull off this villain. But hopefully they don't make him a anti-hero, and I really want them to stick with the villainous side of Mysterio as well, and maybe put Spider-Man under a like an illusion, which he's done in the past as well, which is something I'll be looking forward to see. And also in movie trailers as well, the It trailer dropped this past week. Now I'm not going to focus too much on this as well because they only teased they mostly teased Beverly's story where she came home and she went to her old house to where she lived when she was a kid from the first movie. I really like the fact that they kind of just subtly showed that the person she was talking to was Pennywise, and hopefully we don't see a like naked crawling grandma in that movie. But it was a pretty spooky trailer. But I hope that the jump scare doesn't overshadow the main story, because I really hope that this main story for It Chapter 2 is better than the first one, because they're all adults now. So it'll be a great way to see how these kids who are now adults fight Pennywise. And then I've seen Detective Pikachu this week as well on Thursday night. I got Pokemon cards from the theater, which I did not open. I know people opened it and got like Detective Pikachu and Bulbasaur and some other cards as well. I refuse to open mine to know what cards I have. I just want to leave it a mystery. But this movie, I gave it a 5 out of 5. It really surprised me to see how good they made this Pokemon movie, because originally I only wanted to watch this to see Ryan Reynolds act as Deadpool being Pikachu. I didn't think the storyline was going to be as good as it was. I really loved the twist at the end where they showed that Pikachu was his dad the whole time. The only plot hole I didn't like was that how come the main character Tim didn't realize that was his dad's voice. That was a plot hole that I had, but it didn't really bother me. I mean, overall, this movie was great. It's a great family movie. The morals of the movie are great. You know, friendship and endurance and hope and whatnot. And it's a great way to show that, you know, Pikachu is still a great mascot for Nintendo and for Pokemon, because even kids who don't know Pokemon know who Pikachu is. So it was a great way to keep this character alive. And I really liked that they used references from the first Pokemon movie, like Mewtwo being in the experiment and him having hate against humanity and seeing that humanity isn't as bad as it is. I was having a discussion with a friend, and they were saying that hopefully it's a Pokemon universe, so maybe we might get to see Ash, but I really doubt it, because having those animated characters in this kind of movie kind of just, for me at least, ruins the universe, and I want it to be to where it is its own universe, and that this Pikachu that we see in this movie is his own character instead of being the same one from the animated series. Again, Ryan Reynolds surprised me. He did a great job. I mean, he is a great actor, but to see him portray this iconic character, it was really good. At first, I felt like I was watching a Deadpool-esque character, but later on in the movie, it became its own, and I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot. And Psyduck was one of my favorite characters as well. Him having the headache in the forest was something that I really wanted to see and see his psychic abilities. And I love the animation of the Pokemon. The fact that they gave them fur and gave them this realistic look to it. I didn't really like Charizard's look because I feel like as a lizard like Pokemon, he would have had scales versus I guess what they had was fur on him. I wish they made Charizard's CGI bigger, but then it was still a good and funny fight seeing Pikachu fight Charizard in the cage match because he chokes mid fight, and so that was pretty funny to see. To continue on, I was reading the latest Attack on Titan and My Hero Academia manga chapters that were released this week as well. Um, for those of you who are just listening or who don't know as well, Attack on Titan is a monthly series. So when this new chapter comes out every month, I'm always on it first, and I always want to read it because they're at the point where the not just the arc but the story overall is going to end soon. And I am going to break down Attack on Titan chapter 117 a little bit. Just to start off where they left off in chapter 116, you see that Aaron transforms again to his Titan form, trying to fight off the Jaw Titan and the Cart Titan. The Jaw Titan and the Cart Titan invaded Paradise Island, which is the island that Aaron lives on, and they're trying to save the kids that are held hostage there because they snuck onto their ships from the last invasion at Marley. When they saved Gabby, who is one of the soldiers who's being trained to be a Titan wielder, Cart Titan and the Jaw Titan save her, and they find out that one of the other kids that is being trained for he's being held hostage. And so when Aaron's fighting off the Jaw Titan, you see Reiner and the rest of the Marleyan army come in, and when Reiner jumps in, he jumps right into his Titan form, and bam, round 4 of Aaron versus Reiner. In the manga, they show Reiner's story and that, Reiner isn't a bad guy, but none of these characters are bad guys actually. They're all just victims of circumstances, and they all have different points of views. And so when Aaron and Reiner are fighting, it's just they're fighting for their own cause, and I actually love the character build up for both of these characters. And I used to not like Reiner's character until I read the manga, and honestly, he's one of my favorite characters now. And I just feel bad for him because he's fighting for something he believes in. The same thing for Aaron. He's fighting for something he believes in, that he wants to wipe out the Titans, and Reiner's point of view is that he wants to wipe out the Eldians, who are the people of the island, like Aaron and Armin and Mikasa. So as the fight goes on, you see that Aaron uses his powers of the Warhammer Titan, which is he's able to create like spikes off the ground and off his body and make weapons. So Aaron having more than one Titan power is insane because he's technically the strongest Titan now. He has 3 powers, which is his own, the Attack Titan. He can harden his fist, or crystallize his fist, as well. He's got the Warhammer Titan power. He can create weapons and create like spikes off the floor and off his body. And then he has the Coordinate Titan, which is the Titan that controls everything. He can't access that power because he's not of royal blood, but his brother, Zeke, or the Beast Titan, is. And he plays a major part in this story as well because he wants that power from Aaron. But from what I'm reading so far, it looks like he doesn't really know how to do it yet because he doesn't want to kill Aaron since they're half brothers. And as the fight continues on, you see that Aaron is on the verge of losing, but then his brother comes in and saves him, and they end off that chapter with Zeke on top of the wall and saying that, your big brother is here, I'm going to end this fight now. And so that's such a good way to end off this chapter for 117 of Attack on Titan. I just hate waiting for it for the next month. I really wish that it was either bi-weekly or weekly issues really, but like with 23 pages versus having 48 pages. So I'm very excited for this next issue for next month. Also, speaking of Attack on Titan as well, I just watched the latest episode in season 3. Now in season 3 of Attack on Titan, they continue off to where Aaron and Reiner are fighting as well, and but this time in this part of the story, this is their second time fighting, but you see that Reiner is damaged from the thunder spheres that the that the scouts use against him, and then um, right before he gets killed, Berthold gets thrown into the fight and saves Reiner from being killed. I love this part because the way how they showed this in the manga, it was more straight to the point, but seeing him being confronted by Armin and Mikasa was very emotional because you see that he's learning to just let go of his connections with these characters and saying, screw it, I'm a warrior, and I'm going to fight for what I believe in, fight for my mission, and no one's gonna stop me from doing this. And even the fact that Armin tried to throw him off with Annie, he's like, I'm not letting this get to me. I need to get this mission done. And so he transforms, and I love the quote that he said in this right before he transformed. He's like, he realizes that it's no one's fault. And like I was saying, every one of these characters in Attack on Titan, they're all victims of war, victims of circumstance. No one's bad guy. No one's a bad guy. And the theme of pretty much Attack on Titan is that the world is cruel, and it's how these characters overcome the cruelty of the real world and see what side they pick and see how they handle this cruelty of the world. And so when he transforms, man, that music, the pretty much you could just feel the emotions from the overall story and these characters that you're invested in, and it's just amazing to see that what you've been reading in the panels of the manga get animated into the show, and it's so much better watching this than reading the actual manga, or at least at this point for me. And so I'm excited for next week's episode where Eren fights the Colossal Titan, because at this point it's just some of the main characters fighting the Colossal Titan, and Armin's in charge of this lead. And they also tease Levi fighting next week too. So when he confronts the Beast Titan, that's going to be one of the most epic parts in the overall story, and it just shows how powerful Levi is as a character. And so definitely look forward to watching that, and I definitely do. So hopefully our listeners look forward to watching that. I also wanted to mention that in the beginning of this episode as well for Attack on Titan, that they did a great job going back to the Trost District scene, to where Marco finds out who they are, and I thought that this scene was so much better than the manga part. And again, it just because they were able to add more details versus being straight to the point in the manga. So when they show you the scene where they have to, take away Marco's gear, and you see Annie's face and how Annie reacted to being the one that you see that, because you find out that she is the one that takes away his gear, but to see her do it in the process, and then having her, Berthold, and Reiner leave Marco behind, it was a very sad scene. And then he couldn't negotiate. He wanted to negotiate with them, and they didn't. They left him, and he gets eaten. And so I thought that scene was very, very much more tragic than it was in the first season. Now with My Hero Academia, there's no new episodes, but with this new chapter, they kind of pick up from where the League of Villains is fighting this team, or this company that's trying to lift the ban of using quirks in public. You pretty much learn more about Tamura's quirk, of his decay quirk, and it turns out that his decay quirk can actually spread in the air versus him touching everything. So he doesn't even have to touch you. He can just decay the air, and whoever's around you gets decayed, which I thought that was super crazy. And I think it might be based off his emotions as well, because because in the chapter he was tired, and he just got more powerful. And then they end off the chapter with Dabi fighting another character with ice powers. It was a short read. It was only 14 pages, which sucks. I wish that this chapter was like 18 pages at least. Seeing 4 more pages of Dabi fighting would have been great. And so that's pretty much it for My Hero Academia. There wasn't too much that went on. Hopefully next week's chapter will conclude this fight and go back to the heroes as well. Now to One Punch Man, the newest episode came out. There's no new manga chapter yet, or at least from what I've been seeing, that I haven't seen a new chapter. But in the new episode for One Punch Man, episode 6 of season 2, they show more of the villains that's going to fight the heroes. And I was glad to see the character Phoenix Man, because his powers are crazy in the manga. So whenever they get to that part in the manga, it's going to be amazing seeing him fight. But then he just looks goofy at this point, because he's just some dude in a Phoenix costume and that can fly. And they show more of Saitama fighting in the martial arts tournament, and because he's so goofy, No one knows who he is, and it was funny when they introduced him that Genos was the only one standing up and cheering him and applauding for him. I was dying at that scene. I really thought that was funny, the way how devoted Genos is as a student to Saitama, and it was just more comedic, really. I was very disappointed with the fight of Metal Bat and Garu. In the manga, it looked reading it from the manga, the fight between Metal Bat and Garu was a lot better, but in this episode, it was just very quick, a few minutes of the fight, and that was it. But I still like the fact that they showed that Metal Bat could have killed the Garu when he had the chance, had it not been for his sister stopping the fight. I love the animation that they show for Garu of his martial arts, and hopefully that when he does fight Saitama later on, that they animate it very well, and that it's super good, because the way how they've been animating One Punch Man, that's a lot better than the first season. The fight scenes are much smoother, but I just feel like when it's just like civilians or just them and being in a scene, it's kind of like it's not as smooth as the first season, but the fight scenes are much better. Now to Demon Slayer here. I've been talking about Demon Slayer for the past couple episodes. Demon Slayer came out this week as well with episode 6 of their first season. They pick up to where Tanjiro is actually working as a Demon Slayer now. He's certified. I love that this character's build up in the story is very is very good, because it's not boring. It's like they just it's typical, but then it's not boring. They show him training, but then you see how he grows as a character when he's done with his training and being certified as a Demon Slayer. So he goes to the city to where these girls are being kidnapped, and when he finds out who the demon is, he tries to kill it, but then you realize that this demon can sink to the floor, and he has 3 alternate forms of himself. So he's fighting more than just one at a time. And so right when he's fighting this demon, his sister assists him with this fight, and you learn that she got hypnotized during the time she was sleeping to fight demons and to assist him. So that's going to be a good fight for next week, and I'm excited to see how they're going to use her powers, because she's going to be fighting for good, and she's not bloodthirsty, or she's not wild as she was before. I'm looking forward to next week's fight in Demon Slayer episode 7. This pretty much wraps up my week, at least for me, for what I've been reading and watching. Definitely look into these anime and stories that I've mentioned throughout this podcast. Read it for yourself. And if you have any questions or if you have any criticism, please, you can message the Poplug Podcast page on Facebook, or you can also DM me on Instagram at RickyVang92. Let me know how I'm doing. I would greatly appreciate this feedback, whether it's good or bad. I like to have criticism so I can improve myself on this podcast. And just to let you know as well, for our listeners, I recently bought some new equipment as well, so I'll be able to do interviews soon and bring guests on my show. I'm waiting for a few more things to be mailed to me next week through Amazon. I'll be getting more microphones and more adapters and whatnot, so I can do interviews. My next episode is going to consist of Comic-Con ideas and Comic-Con tips. So I won't be touching up too much on comic books, manga, or movie in the next episode. So definitely, if you're interested in Comic-Con tips and whatnot, and just hearing my experience overall, wait for next week's episode. I'll be able to talk about that. And I'm very excited to have this podcast going, and I'm very excited for those of you who are listening and sharing this. I greatly appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for just being a part of this. Thank you so much for being a part of my growth as I guess you could say, as a podcaster. I really wish I had videos for like the visual aspect of this. I'm very happy with having my podcast be very simple with just audio for now. Again, I would love your criticism, critique, feedback, anything to help improve myself in this podcast and find better ways to, draw in more fans. And if you truly enjoy my content, thank you. Continue to help share my content through SoundCloud, YouTube, Facebook. Help share Poplug Podcast and help the fan base grow. Again, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And so before I sign off, I just want to say, watch Game of Thrones tonight. It's the second to last episode. This episode of Game of Thrones is going to be very exciting. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe Cersei might take the win. because I think she will. I honestly think Cersei's gonna win. But if you don't think so, message me on Instagram or on Facebook, and let me know what you guys think. Is Cersei going to win, or is someone else going to win? Maybe Ghost might win. If Ghost wins, that's because he's the best dog in the world, and Jon Snow's an idiot for leaving him with Tormund. He should have taken him and helped fight in King's Landing, because Ghost would have whooped some ass. But that's it. Thank you so much for listening again. Read your comic books. Visit your comic book stores. Continue to just enjoy pop culture as it is. Don't be afraid to be a nerd. It's a great time to be a nerd. So again, my name is Ricky. Thank you for listening, and have a great night. If you enjoyed this episode, follow my Instagram at RickyVang92, RICKYVANG 92, and follow Popluck Podcast on Facebook.com/PopluckPodcast.